Thank you so much, Mark. As you were speaking, I was surprised to notice some tears coming up and just this recognition that every time, and I know you've been away on sabbatical and we've missed you, but that every time we share space together in this way during the daily sit, I feel held in such a field of kindness. And so I just want to express my gratitude to be here with you and with Harry and with all of us who are choosing to practice together today in this way. Uh, So, as Mark named, I'm Alison Cohen or Allie, either works, she, her, hers. And today I'm joining this sacred kahila, this community from Kalabaw Pond in upstate New York. And it feels very sweet to be tuning in from a new location. That's one of the most beautiful aspects of Zoom land. We can tune in from wherever. And so as we continue to arrive, just an invitation to receive a few more deep breaths. You might close your eyes or soften your gaze. And as you receive each inhale, if it feels right, perhaps loudly sighing out the exhale. Just a few rounds of this. It doesn't need to be silent. An inhale in and a loud sigh out, giving this moment's body a chance to release and arrive a bit more fully. And you might let your breath and the sensations of breathing just return to their natural rhythm. So yesterday, here at the IJS Daily Sit, Rabbi Daniel Raphael Silverstein shared a really beautiful teaching from our sages, and he honed in on one piece from this week's Parsha, from this week's Torah portion, Ki Tetzei. And there's a line in this week's Parsha that reads, this is a paraphrase, if there's a roof, put a railing around it. And what Rabbi Daniel kept focusing on is that our sages offer the building is a metaphor for a person, that we have a say in where we place our attention. Do we keep focusing on this stream of thought that may not be the wisest place to rest our attention? Or do we put a metaphorical railing around it and redirect? He shared much more in his teaching yesterday, but I want to focus in on this chunk, this piece. As I've been reflecting on Rav Daniel's teaching, what keeps coming up for me is this question of what is foundational to the redirection process? What allows us to say, okay, this isn't where attention needs to be right now, and so I'm going to shift it. Ultimately, first and foremost, in order to redirect attention, there needs to be awareness present. Compassionate awareness that illuminates, oh, it's like this right now. This is what's happening. This is where the attention is. And from there, we can inhabit a greater place of agency, an opportunity to consider from the seat of awareness. Is this really where attention makes sense to stay? And I've been reflecting on this in the context of this spiritually potent month of Elul, a month that asks a lot of us, including and especially to consider how might we shift from autopilot patterns of behavior or reactivity to returning to a greater sense of agency. This is one form or one way of understanding tshuva, return. One of my favorite teachings from the Rambam, aka Moses Maimonides, is this piece of wisdom. What constitutes complete tshuva? A person who confronts the same situation in which she, he, they has missed the mark, when she has the potential to commit the same missing of the mark again, and nevertheless abstains and does not commit it because of their tshuva alone, not because of fear, not because of lack of strength. So, same situation, different response. And recently, I've been going down many very energetic rabbit holes, trying to understand and expand my understanding of tshuva. And there are truly innumerable perspectives as well as ways to describe tshuva. But one of my favorites comes from Rabbi Shais Taub, who describes tshuva as recapturing or regaining sensitivity. Recapturing or regaining sensitivity to a particular behavior or reaction that has become an autopilot one. And through this increased sensitivity, the situation may remain the same, but I become different in the way that I respond to it. And I recently heard from the teacher Erin Treat a wonderful alternative or synonym or description of mindful awareness practice, which is contactfulness. Contactfulness. Being in sensitive contact with what's actually happening in this moment. So years ago, I was teaching a mindfulness class to ninth and 10th graders in New York City. And at the end of the 8-week course, there was a focus group, and several students were asked to share about their experiences in the mindfulness program. And after sharing the various ways learning mindfulness was supportive for them, one of them piped up and said, "Also, we've noticed a change in our teacher. There was one student she constantly yelled at. The second he moved in a way she didn't like, the second he verbalized something that wasn't to her taste, she would yell. And now, Miss Cohen, we see her doing that thing. He speaks or moves, and she takes a deep breath and feels her feet on the ground. And even though her face scrunches up as if she's about to yell, she swallows. And then, to the best of her ability, she says something in a more even tone. And she isn't quite there yet, but it's so much more easeful to be in a classroom with less yelling. Same situation, different response. Or a dear friend of mine who's in recovery. And now when a strong I was going to say meditation, a strong emotion comes up, and he's now been in recovery for 2 decades. He shared with me recently he no longer feels the need to turn to drugs or alcohol. Instead, the emotion arises and he thinks to himself, ah, an opportunity to meditate. Wonderful. An opportunity to sensitize myself to this alive experience of being human and to listen to what this emotion is attempting to communicate to me. Am I willing to listen? So we're going to be moving into a meditation in about a minute. But I just wanted to offer a brief list of steps that we can take to concretely bring loving awareness to autopilot behaviors or actions that may be negatively impacting others or myself. And in a sense, awareness can act as a sort of railing that we're putting around whatever may be arising. And in essence, giving ourselves greater agency in these moments where autopilot reactivity has become our first mode of response. So it can be helpful to set a kavanah around an area where autopilot reactivity often makes itself known. To simply say in the morning or throughout the day, with love, okay, in this arena, may I grow in agency, in my ability to choose a different response, one that feels more aligned, or one that's genuinely responsive to the situation rather than reactive. Another invitation is to slow down, to pause more throughout the day, and to make contact, this contactfulness with what's arising in body, heart, and mind. And that's much of why we're here at the Daily Sit, to remember that pausing is a choice we can make in any moment, to engage in tshuva, to engage in a return to what's actually unfolding so that we have access to a different way of responding. And the third, and this is an incomplete list, is to practice what's known as retroactive mindfulness, which means that sometimes we've behaved reactively, the situation is over, the body sends us clear wisdom signals. Ooh, doesn't feel good to talk like that, or to behave that way, or to show up in that way. Well, what can I learn from it? And so we replay it in the mind, in the heart, in the body. And when we get to the point in the story or the experience when we have a modicum of agency about how we respond, we actually play out or role play or walk through, well, next time I could respond this way, or this way, or this way. And so through retroactively going through that moment in time, we're blessed with an opportunity to consider how might we respond differently next time in concrete ways. So now let's move into a lightly guided practice that will just support us in practicing contactfulness. You might close your eyes. You might rest your gaze. You might sense whatever is here now. Just gently making contact with this moment, where, as the teacher Rabbi Joanna Katz offers, where body, breath, and awareness meet. This moment where body, breath, and awareness meet. You might rest a hand on the heart or belly or both. Just this moment of recognizing being human isn't easy. And we keep showing up tenderly, imperfectly, beautifully, humanly. Breath by breath. And Shuva, return, is as close as the next inhale and the next exhale, reminding us this fresh moment is a chance to pause. And so you might sense wherever you're feeling supported by the earth beneath, by the chair, by the surface behind you or beneath you. And simply drop in the question, what's here now? And perhaps awareness illuminates body sensations, emotions, thought. And can it be met with kindness? These tshuva questions that we can simply receive in heart, body, mind, and let them reveal whatever they're meant to reveal. What's here now? And can it be met with kindness? All of it part and parcel of the human experience. So many moments of our lives are infused with a sense of urgency. And this sense of urgency can prevent us from pausing when we need to pause, from layering on or relaxing into the field of compassion that can remind us, maybe in this moment, what's most important is to just stay in contact with what's here now and tend to it with care. And so we'll take the next few minutes in quiet to keep resting in whatever posture we're in. Inhale followed by exhale, exhale followed by inhale. And then from time to time, as a way of expanding our capacity for awareness, dropping in the inquiry, what's here now? And can it be met with kindness? Bringing this additional level of sensitivity to this moment of aliveness, to this moment of experience. What's here now? And can it be met with kindness? In our last minute of practicing together, if you'd like to, you might rest a hand on the heart or belly or both, and sense into the depth of yearning to have greater access to choice, to agency, to genuine responsiveness rather than reactivity. This prayer during Elul, source of life, the ineffable one, Shekhinah, God, however each of us understands the oneness that is, may you help us to keep checking in moment by moment and stay in contact with what's here compassionately so that we have increasing access to the ability to choose. And may our practice be of great benefit. Shabbat Shalom. We'll come back together now for Mourner's Kaddish.
Is Alison for this, for guiding us so beautifully, so wisely, and with so much love. And we seal that practice, as Alison just said, with an opportunity. Those of you who are in mourning, or if you're observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the Mourner's Kaddish, you're welcome to do so. We ask that those who are not reciting Kaddish, please stay present for a few more moments to support those who are, offering your compassionate support and comfort for them. Thanks to Harry for sharing the words of Kaddish on the screen. You can put the name or names of anyone you're thinking of and holding in your heart as you recite the Kaddish. Put that in the chat now or after you recite Kaddish. After we recite Kaddish, I'll sound the shofar as we do during the month of Elul. I invite you to stay present for that as well. And if you're reciting Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit. And you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal,
Shmei Rabbah, Yama Devah
Yamlich Malchutei, Or Yamech Israel, Allah is one Rabah, Amen.
Shmei Rabbah Devorah
Yishtabach Yamar V'Naseh, Shmei Kodashah B'Rechut, Shmei Kodashah B'Shiratav, Shabbatai Ram Yuad V'Alav V'Shalom V'Amin Shemayim
Da'amiran Be'alma V'Yimru Amen. Lama Rabba Mitzvah Aleinu Ve'aleinu Shalom Amen. Shalom Imamavu Ya'aseh Shalom Aminu Ve'Kol Yisrael Aminu Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
once again, many thanks, lots of gratitude to our teacher, Alison Cohen today, and to Harry Goboa for holding our space, and many thanks as well, of course, to Susan Milberg for sponsoring our practice today in loving memory of her mom on the occasion of her yahrzeit, Gloria Joy Milberg, Zichronah Livracha. May her memory be a blessing, Susan, for you, and we're all grateful to you for sponsoring our practice today. Just a reminder, if you're interested in sponsoring one of the daily sets, if you're in a position to offer a gift of $180 or more, you can dedicate a set. Also, if you're part of our Rosh Chodesh community and are in a position to become a monthly supporter of IJS at $18 a month, you can do that as well. So just want to make sure people know that. As always, you're welcome. We hope you'll stay on for a conversation with our teacher today about this beautiful practice that Alison led us through. And if you're leaving us now, put in the chat our lineup of teachers for next week. Once again, wonderful lineup of teachers. Oops, my sound is awful. That's because my original sound for musicians. Better? There we go. After the shofar, I forget to turn it back off sometimes. I apologize. So anyway, hope you'll stick around for conversation. I put the schedule of our wonderful schedule of features for next week in the chat. If you're leaving us now, Shabbat Shalom. Hope you have a restorative and much needed Shabbat over the weekend, and hope to see you back here on Monday. And if you have a question you'd like to ask, Alison, please put it in the chat, write question in caps before the question, and I will keep an eye out for, whoops. Here we go. Here we're both here. Alison, thanks for your kind words at the beginning. Much appreciated. It was so sweet. Thank you. Back at you for sure. I'd like to talk about retroactive mindfulness. I had never heard that term before. It's a lot to talk about here, but it really resonated for me in particular because I'm deep into annual rereading of Alan Liu's wonderful book about the high holidays. This is really completely unprepared, and I'm reading and writing about Rosh Hashanah, and he describes pretty much what you were talking about, like, which is really interesting. Like, after we have missed the mark, after we've said whatever, something or spoken or acted unwisely, and we have that, could have done that differently. Then what? And he describes Rosh Hashanah as basically sitting in a viewing room with the divine, watching the whole videotape of the past year with all the, all the good things, but also all the missteps, and how that feels. How does it feel to watch that retroactively in that way? And the way you described, I'm just going to say, like the way you described it, and maybe you can elaborate on a little bit, retroactive mindfulness, is that like, it struck me, the way I heard you was that it's really going back and revisiting those moments with a lot of compassion, which enables us to see it clearly and transform from it. And that he basically says that's how it has to happen. We can't berate ourselves into doing better. We can't, deny and avoid and not look at that stuff. We have to look at everything, and we have to have the assumption that we're doing that from God's perspective, as he would put it, which is the perspective of compassion and forgiveness. So that's where I went immediately. So, Rosh Hashanah is a day of retroactive mindfulness. Beautiful. Love that. Is that in keeping with what you meant or how you understand that? And also,
Definitely.
where did you get that? I've never heard that. That's so
I think
wonderful.
I first heard the term from Jack Kornfield, from the teacher Jack Kornfield, who frequently receives the question, I feel so bad. I wasn't mindful in a given moment or relational interaction and my mindfulness went out the window. How do I navigate that?
Right.
And one of my favorite sayings, which I've heard from Tara Brach, is, may this too serve awakening. May this too serve awakening. So from a Jewish perspective, if nothing is beyond God's purview, or if nothing is beyond the divine, and every moment is an opportunity to awaken a bit more
Mhm.
to that truth, and also to the opportunity for tshuva, then yes, Rosh Hashanah is a day of retroactive mindfulness. And it's really important to recognize that very little becomes transformed unless we actually have concrete alternatives that either we come up with on our own, or, and this is what's most likely, we involve someone else, a wise friend, a mentor, a teacher, in considering, well, what are other ways I could respond in that moment? I've had many moments of retroactive mindfulness in my life where I realize I don't actually know another way of responding, or I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And that's a great time to call a friend.
Mhm.
I want a friend that we can actually be vulnerable with. I want to behave differently in this situation. I'm not sure what that would even look like. Can you brainstorm with me? Can we practice?
Right.
And the other piece of this, which feels important to mention, is that since so many of us on some level have come to see ourselves, whether we realize it or not, as bad in some way, it can be very difficult after a moment of behaving in a way that doesn't really align with our values or how we want to show up, to actually pause and feel that after.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
there can be, I've had for years, I almost dissociated in those moments. It was like, oh, that's too much to feel. It's too difficult to be with the remorse or the regret or the reality that I really missed the mark a moment ago.
Right.
And what you mentioned, Mark, about the compassion is
Mhm.
the critical piece. You know, the king is in the field, or Elul, this acronym, I am my
Right.
beloved and my beloved is mine. We have access to greater compassion during this month. And so, what does it look like to say, this is hard to feel, and I'm held in compassion, a compassion that understands just how hard it is to be human? And it's only through making contact with this hard to feel experience that I can then open to new possibilities.
Right. Yeah, that's all wonderful. Um, when you use those two phrases for Elwal, these kind of imagery, that king is in the field, and then the I Mila do Diva do Lim, I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine, which has that loving connotation. It was interesting because when I heard the king is in the field, I felt I know that phrase. Um, and I felt an alert, like, uh-oh, the king is in the field. Watch out, what if the king sees me? That I noticed that that's a kind of default reaction that I have there, which is
Mhm.
the signal of that question about, but the two of them together, it's interesting because where I wanted to go, the conversation was now to back to the parapet, the railing around the roof and what that railing represents. And in your teaching, tell me if I didn't really get this, if this doesn't reflect what you were saying, but what I heard was that we kind of when we encounter that boundary, the railing on the roof, there's a signal, and maybe that signal is that kind of discomfort that you just described that could lead to dissociation or, or self-flagellation or, or denial or avoidance, whatever. Or if we attend to it with awareness, can say, oh, maybe there's another way I could have done that. And then, like you said, like maybe I need some help to figure out what another way would be. Um, And so that railing represents, that's really where the magic happens. Like that's right. That's where, and even in meditation, when we notice, oh, I've wandered away. My mind has wandered off. Ugh, I'm a terrible meditator. I should get back, right? Or it's what's the point? I've already so lost. Why bother even trying to come back, right? That what happens in that moment of whether it's harsh self-judgment or whether it's compassionate, like bringing ourselves back, that's that parapet around the roof. I like that word parapet. Um, railing around the, such a great, it's such a fantastic metaphor. So anyway, so it's, would you say that railing is something that kicks awareness into gear in a way? Like we wake up in that moment. Or, or do we always have the awareness? There's like, we kind of like become less aware and now we're more aware by the sting of that way. I also started thinking, oh, it's like, I don't know anything about electrical fences for pets, but I was sort of imagining that's kind of what happens with electrical fence, that it sort of sends a signal, say like, don't go beyond here.
Yeah, Mark, you know what I would say is this is one of those classic inquiry questions that doesn't have one clear answer.
Mhm.
So in the railing metaphor, and then in our last few minutes, we've gotten quite a few questions, and I might
Yeah.
just respond to a few of them briefly. The inquiry that you're inviting us into is for each of us, what is the railing in a given moment? And sometimes it might be a signal in the body. Sometimes, because this is the nature of awareness, we might be more or less tuned into awareness. And then for whatever reason, awareness illuminates something for us. Who knows why? It's an act of grace. And so I invite us all into the inquiry that Rabbi Mark is really pointing to here, which is in a given moment, what is the railing? Yeah. And then, as I like to say, this is not question and answer. This is question and response.
Mhm.
Much of the time, I don't have the answer. In
Mhm.
fact, most of the time, but I might have a response. So there was a question I think that's important to return to around what was the kavanah that I gave? And now I'm trying to find it. Oh, can you repeat your words for setting kavanah around autopilot spots?
Mhm.
I don't remember my exact words, but it was something along the lines of, um, may I honor the yearning to be able to increasingly access choice, increasingly access agency, increasingly access, and I saw that there was a mention of Viktor Frankl here, increasingly access the space between stimulus and response, because therein lies my freedom. In this particular arena, please help me find my way to that sacred space between stimulus and response. And if I don't even know what other responses might be, help me seek out supportive fellow practitioners and people on the path that I can be humble with and vulnerable with, and who will hold me in compassion and also help guide me.
That's beautifully said. We only have about a minute, so I don't want to slow down and hit another path, but I see so much resonance in the chat and so much appreciation. And what you just said, I think, is such a beautiful description that what we strive to create here every day in terms of that container of support, and each of us yearning for the resources, internal and external resources that we need in order to be able to refrain from autopilot and reactivity, and also to realize that the progress is incremental, and not necessarily so linear, but that over time, hopefully this gradually helps us get to the point that your friend was describing, right? Where when that happens, we have that when we're drawn, when we're in situations where we'd be drawn to the autopilot of whatever it might be for us, we realize, oh, thanks for reminding me to meditate. Feeling situation. Thanks for helping me come closer to my truer self in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I know we need to close. I will just say one key piece of this process is actually really savoring the moments when there is alignment, when we do pause,
Mm-hmm.
so that the brain's tendency towards negativity bias often means we skip over the moments when actually, oh, I didn't say the thing that I would later regret.
Yeah. Right.
And if we can, in the aftermath, take a moment, put hand on heart and belly, and say, this lifelong journey, whew, of
Yeah.
tshuva, it's a long one. And also, that moment is awakening.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for that. Essential. Makes me just to end with that. It makes me think about that image of watching the whole year in retrospect, with the divine. And it's not just watching, the screw ups. It's watching also and say, oh, that was a good one. Well done. Yeah, exactly. A lot of finger snapping by God, and a lot of muscle, way to go. And then the highlights and the lowlights and everything in between. It's all there. It's all there, and it all is support. Ellie, thank you so much, as always. What a great gift today, to have this time and benefit from your guidance. We're all deeply appreciative. And Susan, thank you too for sponsoring us today, and Harry for holding us together. Each and every one of you for being here to hold this space together. And hope it supports you in moving into Shabbat, and also have a restorative Shabbat and whatever you need over the weekend. And hope to see you back here on Monday, everyone. Shabbat
Mark, we're
Yep.
going to close by inviting everyone who wants to unmute for 10 seconds and
Ooh.
cheer that you're back. You're
Oh.
back. Woo! Let's unmute. Yay, Rabbi Mark.
Yay,
Hey,
Rabbi
Rabbi
Mark.
Mark. Hey, Rabbi Mark.
Rabbi Mark.
Oh.
You're back.
Rabbi Mark.
All right, who did that? Who did that?
Shalom.
Yay.
Shalom.
Thank you too. Mark.
Shalom.
Thank you. Thank you.
Baruch haba.